there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Cannon?
Thank you. I appreciate the insight, Mr. Edwards. Two questions for you. You referenced making the community more equitable. Could you just briefly define what you mean by that? And also help me understand a little bit, what does an equity audit typically cost? I've heard the cost could be dramatically higher than what this grant will cover. I had asked the administration previously if we didn't have this grant opportunity, would this be in an upcoming budget? It didn't sound like it would, which is fine. But what is the investment level typically, and is this going to do enough? I guess if this is wildly successful, I guess I'll start with those two questions.
Sure. Can you just repeat the first question? I got the second one.
Could you define equitable the way you meant? You referenced it a few times, making the community, forgive me if I'm paraphrasing slightly, feel free to correct me.
Sure.
Making the community or the municipality
Yeah.
more equitable.
Sure.
Specifically, and then the questions I had about what does an equity audit typically cost? We can continue from there.
So in terms of equity, when we look at equity, we don't want to necessarily look at equality, but looking at our structure, our employment structure, are employees engaged? Do employees feel like they have a say, depending on what department they work in? Do they feel like they can bring their authentic selves to the job and be treated as an equal? So, that can also, somewhat relate to our policies. Like, what do our policies say about harassment or discrimination? Are they fair and are they equitable? Like, do people feel like they either have a voice, or when they bring up concerns or complaints, are they heard? And that's something that an equity audit might look at. I've talked with other municipalities, and depending on the scope of services, an equity audit could cost between $30,000 to $100,000. I think what we're asking for in our scope, we would be in the probably $30,000 to $50,000 range. And one of the reasons why I want to focus on internal, I think there was a question, I watched the meeting last time, and there was, I think, a question of an internal and external audit. I want to focus on our internal structures. An external might be looking at doing an equity audit of the community, finding out what the needs of the community are related to the city. So focus on our internal structures first, and then maybe at some point down the line, I think after 2 years, you can go back and apply again for another grant, and maybe this one we can focus on the external, the community. Internal
structures, do you mean who reports to whom? Structures how? I don't know what you mean.
Sure. Structures as who's our employment structure. What are there more men than women in leadership positions? What does the racial makeup look like? What does the makeup of the city look like in terms of people who are in charge, or who are heads of departments, as opposed to people who are not? It would look at a number of different, so I guess when I say structures, I mean those structures, like what is the makeup of our city?
But don't we have that data? I mean, I'm trying to connect the dots of hiring an outside consultant. We know how many men work for the city, how many, I know, our, Veterans Office is 100% women, our finance office, I mean, don't we have that data? What is an outside consultant for $50,000 going to tell us that we don't know?
And that's just one piece of the entire
That's why I'm
process.
Asking.
Right, yeah, so that's just, we have that data. They would come in and probably meet with folks from HR, they'd probably come and meet with me, they would meet with various other departments, but that's just one small piece of the entire picture they would be looking at.
And we have that product now. Let's say, fast forward, we spent $50,000. We have the product. What will that? I guess what will we know that we don't, and what will we do with that information? Like, I heard conversations in the past, not from you, I don't believe, of we need to make sure that the municipal workforce is reflective of the city's population. I'm paraphrasing, I think, Ms. Malik. Help me out with what you said, because I want to paraphrase you accurately. Do you recall what I'm...
I mean, I think what you said is a good...
Is that...
I don't remember exactly, but...
Does that make sense? Is that correct? Is that... I mean, I'm hearing that from others, but I'm not... sometimes when we talk about this, we talk about, well, other communities have done this, or my interpretation of this based on what an educational institution has done is this, and it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to do the same thing as the city of Framingham. But is that the goal, making sure that the municipal workforce is consistent with the population,
It could be. I'm not sure what I'm not sure what the metrics the firm would use. That is something that we could definitely speak with them about.
No, I mean, is that a goal, though? Is a goal, because it comes up every time we talk about this in the council, where someone will say, sometimes multiple people will say, a goal is to make sure that the municipal workforce is reflective of the population that it serves.
Sure.
So is that, are we on the right, not necessarily, I'm paraphrasing other people.
Yeah, no, you know what I mean, yeah. Well, example, language access. I mean, that is something we're seriously lacking here in the city. So that could be something that, people could look at and say, yeah, I don't have, it should be more reflective of our community. Some of the city departments or employees could be more reflective of the community.
I wholeheartely agree with you there with the language access, which is why I'm having trouble figuring out, because sometimes what a municipality, not picking on Framingham, but sometimes a municipality, instead of taking action, recognizing that we need people that speak other languages in key public-facing positions, and I think we're actually making really good progress there, by the way.
Yeah.
Instead, we're going to hire a consultant, we're going to wait until they, so it makes it look like we're doing something, but we're not. And if we know that language access is a thing, and I think the administration is doing a good job in making strides in those areas, why are we hiring an outside consultant to tell us that something that we have known for some time and are already taking action on?
And I would agree with you. We are making progress in that area, but I believe that we could be doing more. And then this audit or this process might help develop what more we could be doing. I don't know what they might recommend. I don't know.
Okay. Last question that I'll leave you with, and I appreciate the time. Because it comes up in every conversation, is it a fair characterization to say the goal is, and I don't mean conversation with you, every time the council talks about this, is that ultimately a goal to make sure that the municipal workforce is reflective of the population that it represents, or is that an incorrect?
I would say that would be a goal.
That would be a goal. So let me ask you this, and this will be my last question. If the goal is to make sure that the municipal workforce is consistent with the population that it represents, which I think sounds warm, I think the sentiment is well intended, why does it seem then does that mean we believe that a white resident can't be served by someone in the treasurer's office who is of color? If the goal is to make sure, well, because if we've established that that a goal of these endeavors is to make sure that the municipal workforce is reflective of the community that it represents and looking at the demography of the community, help me understand how we get there. Do we believe that a white resident of the city of Framingham is not adequately served by a person of color who works in the treasurer's office, for example? I don't believe that can possibly be true. And I think that the training, there are other traits other than racial composition that would have that interaction be more effective than things that are happenstance when we're born because we're born in certain circumstances or at the right time or in the right place. But if the goal is to make sure that the municipal workforce is reflective of the community that it serves, help me unpack that a little.
Yeah. And I'll go back. And I just don't want to focus on race, but I do want to focus a little bit more on what we spoke about earlier, and that's language. So if somebody comes in and does not speak the language and they can't get services, I mean, I could be a black man who speaks Portuguese and still assist with someone who's in need of a service, or white who's in need and speaks Spanish. I mean, it's not solely focused on race.
So then I get back to the question, in just having the conversation, I appreciate the spirited dialogue that we're having. If it's language, then why are we spending $50,000?
It's not just language, though.
Then help me understand what else it is.
Mr. Chairman, can I just jump in here for a second? I don't think it's all about analyzing what exists in the city. Because as you say, we have records that we know, we've already done a survey in a building. We know how many people we have that speak Spanish or speak Portuguese or speak other languages. We know that. I think part of the equity audit is going to help us to move forward. And if we want to, and if the goal is to make the workforce reflect what the community looks like, they're going to help us with best practices, developing best practices, how to do that.
So that is the goal.
Yes,
So
that's
then-
that's the main goal. But there's these subparts of it that I'll filter into that goal. And when you point out, well, white person in a treasurer's office helping someone, a minority or something.
That's not what I said. I said the opposite of that because.
Okay, whatever, yeah. And as he pointed out, that if someone comes into the building and they're recently arrived here from a foreign country and they need a birth certificate or a death certificate or something, and they don't speak the language, I think they would feel more comfortable if they saw someone waited on them that reflected their situation, their demographic situation. I think it makes it easier for people to communicate with the people in City Hall that are going to provide those services. So I think this whole equity audit is going to help us improve the services we provide to the entire community.
Then I still get back to, and
All right.
I appreciate that you want to move on, Mr. Chairman, but
Oh, it's not that I want to move on. It's just that I'm not sure we're going to get any further.
so this will come back to the council for,
Yes.
okay, so when we get back to the, I'll support it this evening. I think it's important for us to really understand is it the goal? Because I think a white resident can be effectively and successfully served by a person of color, and I think the language thing, we're making strides, we will continue to make strides now that we've recognized that it's a need, without hiring consultants for tens of thousands of dollars, which result in, this is a great job for consultants, because it's ultimately something you can't really measure. And whenever we've talked about how will we know if these efforts are very successful, because in municipal jobs, when you're asking taxpayers to pay for things, and I recognize this small thing is a grant, they have to be able to point to metrics. How will we know if we're successful or not? And if it's when the workforce is reflective of the population, as it seems there is consensus on, well, then I would like you to help me understand why we believe, it seems, that a white person who speaks English only, who is a resident of the city of Framingham, can't be effectively served by someone who is bilingual of color in a public-facing department. Otherwise, what is the premise for making sure that we're reflective? Is it activity for the sake of activity? Is it well-intentioned but without mission? That's what I'd like to further understand, so I can enthusiastically support this. And these are questions that I am asked by the public, and I don't have good answers for them yet. But I will support the motion here this evening, and I'm very appreciative and grateful for the conversation we've had this evening.
Thank you.